Coach? Hey, Mr. Payson, how are you?
Hey, I'm fine. I'm here. I've got no picture, but I'm here.
You'll see a picture once we go live. It's going to look, I think Nathan has you all blacked out until we go live.
There it is. Okay,
You're right there
yeah,
with the
Okay, well, welcome. Let's get this meeting for January 12th, 2022, 6 o'clock p.m. for the Marble Falls Independent School District Board of Trustees. Special meeting called to order at 6:03 p.m. We have all members present in one way or another. Coach Berkman is joining us online, and Dr. Allen joining us online also. Everyone else is in attendance here. And let's get things started. I'd ask Ms. McCrary if she would open us with an invocation. We'll just leave it at that for tonight.
Dear God, we thank you for giving us the opportunity to serve you in our community and our roles. I pray that you would be with us tonight as we discuss budget issues. Please help us all to be good stewards of the money that's collected from taxpayers in our community. And I also pray that you would just grant us wisdom and humility to serve the kids and the community as best that we can. In your son's name we pray. Amen.
Coach, Dr. Allen, y'all good? Can y'all hear us okay? Do we have feedback back?
No, I hear you just fine. Thank you.
Coach, you with us?
Yes, I am.
All right, good deal. Okay. We will get into item 4 is citizen comments. Ms. Jackson has a citizen comment for us tonight. Come on up. Generally, we try to limit these about 3 minutes long, but we're excited to hear what you have to say.
You know I can't say nothing in no 3 minutes.
I know.
I'm here, and for one reason, we're constructing an African American museum on the church property. So I thought I've been asked on numerous occasions. Certain people I know asked about Black history, they won't need one. I'm writing to you as friends and the Marble Falls community. As you all know, I was the first a part of the Falls on the Colorado Museum. We worked very hard. I and Billy Becker, we did our little back and forth. It's a whole lot it entails. But it happened. Now our city needs an African American museum for helping to get the African American Museum in our town, which will be the first in Burnett County. History is not taught in the state of Texas because of controversial things. This is not just to put down anybody, to let anybody try to feel above or beneath anybody, but it's a point of knowledge. Have you ever paid attention to the face of Marble Falls? You don't see no Black people in no positions in Marble Falls. There are many African American students and people that have contributed to this nation. There are many Blacks in Burnett County who have gone to turn out to be great citizens of this country. There are inventors, there are poets, there are publishers, lawyers, senators. These are the people we don't know anything about. The fact that Marble Falls is white, our children can't relate. This is not a white world. This is our world. Who is Becky Davis? Anybody know? Does anybody know who Marquita Pride is? Does anybody know who Ann Foster is? How about Charles Washington? All of these kids are successful today because they came from Marble Falls District. Our kids, the community does not know this. They need to know that. We have books, everything that's available to them. The name of the ladies and the hidden figures that helped John Glenn get to the astronaut, how many of us know who those ladies were? I just found out. Nobody talks about that. The ladies were genius in math. You know, when they passed 1 and 1 and 4 to 3, and I can't do it, but they were instrumental in getting him to be where he needed to be. They knew what they were doing. These were Black ladies with families. How many of us know about the Oklahoma massacre? an affluent black community, but because somebody didn't like them, they destroyed them all. They're still trying to find some of the bodies. Guess what? I just found out about that last year. It's not in the history books. We teach American history, but we teach out somebody's history. It's not a whole American history. That's what we want to do. We want to do the whole American history. How many of us know who Henry Louis Gates is? You know Henry Louis Gates? The man is awesome. He's a historian, and he just researches and goes on and find out about everything that needs to be known about that. If you answer yes to any of the questions, I think you're a smart person, but I'm almost sure that it's not going to be. This is the reason why an African American museum is true and needs to be in our community. Not watered down history. We all know about slavery. We all know about rising above the storm, injustice, overcoming abuse. And the words of Dr. King that says, our lives begin at the end of the day, silence about things that matter. If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, keep moving forward. These are quotes from Dr. King. The time is always right to do what's right. We must accept the finite disappointments, but even in loss being finite, we still have hope. These are the things that we want to express and show to our kids. I would like Marble Falls ISD to have a field day. They can come to the museum the same way they go to Falls on the Colorado, the same way they go to Burnett. It can be on there. The tour, the Marble Falls tour system, all these things can be implemented in the proper way. But we have the material, but we don't have the museum. We're trying to build a museum. I'm asking the school district to see if we can do some sort of curriculum to set that in place. I've talked, so now it's time for action. We're not going to settle for all that Black Lives Matter and all that destructive stuff. No, this is not about any of that. This is positive stuff. We want to do something positive for our community, for all of our kids to know that we are true Americans. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Any questions, comments, board? So, Ms. Jackson, I would encourage you, Dr. Allen, will you maybe schedule a time where we can sit down with Ms. Jackson and see what the school district could do to help with that initiative, maybe moving forward?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I think that'd be good.
Thank you. We will. That sounds good. All right. Okay, that gets us to presentation and discussion items, possible action. Before we get into this, I just wanted to make it clear. So we don't have any action to take yet on the minor boundary adjustment, the Stetson and Associates, or the discussion of the superintendent's evaluation. So for all those items, we'll just table those until the next meeting, and then we're going to schedule a meeting to talk specifically just about superintendent's evaluation, and Crystal's working on getting those dates. So really it just leaves us with a couple of agenda items, one being, or the next one being the budget workshop from Ms. Lafferty.
Hello, everybody. Well, tonight we're here to take a high-level look at the current year budget for 21-22. We're also going to look at those ESSER funds that are sitting out there, and then kind of look into, as we start moving forward into the 22-23 budget process, start looking forward towards that. So our agenda tonight is we're going to look at enrollment, and then we're going to look at ADA. And what I've done is some charts to kind of show you over the past 5 years what enrollment and ADA have been doing, and I think it speaks a lot to what's going on this year. Of course, property values are always increasing, so That's really a moot point, but they, in effect, do have an effect on our funding. So, and then I'm going to briefly talk through the TEA operational minutes adjustment for that first 6 weeks reporting period of this year, and then look at our general fund and kind of what's in our hip pocket on how to help us with this decrease in student ADA. And then kind of a forward look going into 22-23 as we start budgeting some of the things we need to be thinking about and that we'll be up against as we start to budget. And of course, you always get presented the budget calendar, and so that's the last couple of pages. Not a whole lot's changed, just the dates. So, all right, if you'll turn to page 3. This is a 5-year look at enrollment since 2018. And that's going to be the school year, of course. And those top 3 bars at the top is, of course, 17-18 is the blue line, and then 18-19 is the yellow line. And then we were looking pretty good in 2019-20 before COVID. And we were at Christmas break at December 17th, we were sitting at around a little over 4,300 kids in enrollment. But unfortunately, as you come down to the bottom of the graph, you can see that the orange line is last year's enrollment, where we were sitting at about 4,052. And of course, we continue to drop as we get to that green line for this year, where we're right at 4,000 students. So we're down, when things were good, we're down about 300 kids. You'll turn to page 4. This is our refined ADA over the last 5 years. Again, the green and purple and blue lines are the 18, 19, and 2020 school years. And you can see where it kind of dropped off in 2020. The green line, we were sitting at 3,962 refined ADA. And then we never came back after spring break. And then, of course, last year, the red line is 2021, and we were under remote instruction, which helped us significantly in our ADA. Of course, there were hold harmlesses. And then the blue line for the first and second 6 weeks down there is basically where we're at as of December of this year. So for the first 6 weeks, where we tanked quite a bit, we had about a little over 3,500 ADA, and then things began to improve in the second 6 weeks. Now, we're finalizing the third 6 weeks, and we'll have that data the next time we look at it, but at the point in time that this presentation was put together, we only had our second 6 weeks data. So when we talk about the operational minutes adjustment later in the presentation, that's basically going to take that 3,564 ADA in the first 6 weeks and kind of bring that data point back up in a line with the second 6 weeks ADA. And we'll go through that in more detail later. But it kind of gives you a visual of what's going on. Page 5 is basically our attendance percentage rates. And you can see all the other years are kind of up above, and then this year we're struggling in our attendance rates. For the first 6 weeks, we were sitting at about 91.9% on our attendance rate overall, and then the second 6 weeks improved ever so slightly to 94.4%. And again, that adjustment that TEA is going to calculate on those operational minutes will help improve that rate for us. But you can see in 2021 up there, the black line, that's when we were still under the COVID remote, and so it kept us more in line with our typical school year. So we have a problem for this school year in attendance. Page 6 is a cleaner look at the refined ADA, and this is overall ADA for each year. So this is the past 5 years. And you can see in 2020, things were good, and then we went pandemic, and we've been on the decline since. So if you average the first 6 weeks for this year, we're about 3,619, almost 20 if you want to round that up, 3,620 in ADA. All right. And then page 7, of course, is our property value growth. And this is by tax year, this is not school year. So that 2022, the 2 bars for 2022, that's my projection for our values going into the 23 budget, 2023 budget. So continuing to increase. And by the way, we did not win our protest with the state comptroller, so we got state values. I did finally get that information a couple of weeks ago. So not much has changed on that. All right, so turn to page 8, and we'll briefly discuss the operational minutes adjustment. Of course, this is for you to read at your leisure also, but TEA has no plans to issue missed school day waivers due to COVID-19 for 21-22 when we close campuses or the district at large. However, you can still do low attendance waivers, but you cannot do them for the first 6 weeks. And that's where that operational minutes adjustment will come into play. But for the remaining 6 weeks, you are able to go ahead and apply for those attendance waivers if your ADA is at least 10% below the school's last year overall average of 96.05%. And I think if we fall below that, we have every intention, right, Yarda, of applying for those waivers. So what they're doing for the first 6 weeks is they're implementing an adjustment to the required 75,600 minutes of operation for the first 6 weeks reporting period only. And this is basically to help stabilize that rate and make it more typical of one of our regular school years. It's not, it's an automatic adjustment, and we don't have to apply for this one, thank goodness. It's not a hold harmless, so even though we're down in enrollment, that's not gonna help us. It's just gonna help our rate, basically. And so TEA is gonna calculate this at their level. I don't have any control over this calculation, but they're gonna calculate a target percentage attendance rate, and that rate is going to be calculated. It will be the lesser of our 2019-20 average rate for our first 6 weeks, which was 96.5%. Or, and I love how they always pick the last 6 weeks of your school year when you're not there yet, but or they will take the 2021-22 final 6 weeks combined average, which we don't know that yet. We're not there yet. So the mystery's still on. I don't know why they do that. It drives me crazy, but they do. So basically, they will calculate that rate, and then districts will get the greater of that rate that they calculate, that target percentage rate, or the first 6 weeks of the 21-22 school year. So more than likely, we're going to get the TPAR, the target percentage attendance rate, sitting at an actual attendance rate of 91.9. So in the chart below, this is my best estimate of that calculation. So you can see the top blue line is ADA, and for the first 6 weeks, we had 3,563 on the previous pages, and the second 6 weeks, 3,676 in ADA. And then I basically kind of trended that down like we normally trend down in a typical school year to get the remaining 6 weeks. And then, of course, our actual attendance rate for that first 6 weeks was at 91.91%, and the second 6 week holding fast at 94.44%. So my estimate of the target percentage attendance rate, which is hard to say, I landed on about 95.5 rather than the 96.5, just in anticipation, if things tank in the final 6 weeks. So if we apply the new rate to that ADA, you can see down at the bottom, that blue line, that would be our adjusted ADA, and it would put that first 6 weeks back in line with the remaining 6 weeks average daily attendance rates. Does that make sense? Again, that's my best estimate. So basically, if we carry that out, that final number, 3,675, at the very bottom corner of that chart is the ADA that I am anticipating right now that we will be at as final average ADA. And so that's what I'm using for our current year budget, which we'll be looking at here on the next page. So turn to page 9 if you don't have any questions. You got any questions on that one? Hopefully not too extensive because it's still pretty vague, but. Based on what I know today, I feel pretty good about it. I'm hoping we get a lot more students between then and now. I would love to see us get up around 3,800, make me feel better. But I don't know. All right, so on page 9, we're basically looking at our general fund budget. And so the first column to the left is our amended budget after we had adopted. And of course, you can see that we budgeted on 3,900 ADA. And then you can see in the second column to the right, we missed it. But the student numbers just didn't come in like we had anticipated. So basically, if we were to take that ADA and put that into the formulas, it's going to change our budget. You can see there on that second column, we would be looking, rather than about a $250,000 surplus, we're looking at about a $1.75 million deficit to the general fund. And as those property values continue to increase, so they're going the wrong way, if you remember. Property values have to increase, ADA needs to go the same way, but when they start intersecting, that's what creates this. And you can see there that the only one that's benefiting here is recapture. And it, of course, begins to increase. So we're right now, based on what we know, we're faced with about a $1.75 million deficit. Now, in our hip pocket, we have this federal stimulus money. Okay? So right now we're going to focus on Sr2 Fund 281. And you can see down at the bottom of the page, I've got some bullet points that kind of gives you the history of that stimulus funding. And right now we're going to focus on that Sr2. So originally we were allocated $2 million, or I'm just going to round numbers for simplicity. We were allocated $2.7 million in Sr2 funding to get us through 2023. Now, we had to use a portion of that last year for our hold harmless and to keep the general fund out of a deficit position. So we consumed about $514,000 in the 2021 fiscal year. That leaves us this $2.2 million that we're looking at here in the third column to get us through the next several years. So we've got, it shows there's 1.6 million in payroll that's budgeted. That's just when we filled out the application, that's just the grant budget. We don't have that many positions budgeted there just yet. It's just a holding place. So if you come down to the bottom of the Sr2 column, you can see there's a negative 200,000. That's about what we have being funded currently out of Sr2. And then I am estimating that we won't be at a $1.75 million deficit. We'll be closer to about $1 million deficit in the general fund because we always have our vacancy factors and money's always left on the table. We typically leave easily $500,000, $700,000 on the table each year. So with that being said, we would consume a portion of that Sr2 money, and that would leave us a little over $1 million, $1,047,000, that we could carry forward into the next budget cycle to help sustain the general fund. Okay, any questions there? So we're having to use Sr2 just to keep the general fund, and this is by design from TEA, of course.
That was the intent for that money, was to help us offset. Like, what are we losing out on if we don't use it for that? That was why it's sitting there, right?
Yes, we've kind of kept it in our hip pocket.
Yeah.
So most of our budget planning, if you'll remember, that far column over there is that Sr3 money. And remember, we were looking at it when we were budgeting for this year. And so that 1.664 million that's in payroll there in the Sr3 column, Those are those general fund positions that we have pushed out there to supplant and fund those positions out there. So that's just a grim reminder that that's got to come back into the general fund at some point. Looking a little grim, but we have avenues out of this thing. Okay, is there any questions on that? It's just a high-level look as we get ready to go into the next budget year. All right, turn to page 10. So page 10 is kind of a forward look as we go into the next budget year. So the first column, of course, is the current year budget that we are faced with at that $1.75 million deficit. And so I kind of went out there and I projected some property values and basically increased our ADA at this point, being very, very conservative, at 3,700 ADA for next year. Well, you can see recapture continues to climb because those values are increasing. But overall, that would leave us about we'd still be sitting in the same type of position, a $1.5 million deficit to the general fund. However, we carry forward those Sr2 funds to the next year. We could use the remaining balance of that Sr2 to help sustain, to get us through the 2023 fiscal year. And then, of course, we're carrying our Sr3. It's continuing to do what and spend like it normally spends. Any questions or thoughts? And Dr. Allen, did you want to
Well,
anything here?
I guess what I would say is this slide, or this page right here in particular, when we look at the 22-23, largely outlines the task before us as an administrative team as we build the budget this spring going into next year. We do have those ESSER funds we can carry forward, but those ESSER funds do exhaust, and we're going to have to bring our budget into alignment. I think Melissa's made clear the degree to which we are really getting beat up by the virus's impact on ADA. Our normal ADA runs about 96.5%. We haven't touched that but once or twice on any campus all year, much less as an entire district. So even on our good days, we're way below what we should be. So we're going to have to get past these absences. We got to get back to normal, but then B, we got to bring this into alignment. So the difficulty is that we have a deficit. The good news is we have ESSER funds to help us carry forward, but we are going to have to try and get that number down as we build the budget this spring. And part of what I think we're wanting to try and make sure the board sees is that we're okay. Like, we're okay in the sense that we have funds to deal with the issues that sit in front of us, but those funds they won't be there forever. So we've got to use this opportunity that we have and use this time that we have to get things in alignment. While at the same time watching enrollment. Everybody keeps promising me there are going to be families moving to town. And so we're in this weird place of trying to adjust to a lower ADA with the way that we operate the district, while at the same time being cognizant of the fact it could start to bounce back up, and we don't want to be understaffed during the teacher shortage either. So it's kind of a pretty tricky balance we're going to try and walk, but we've already got some pretty good ideas about how we can try and accomplish that. So I feel pretty good about it.
And then, of course, pages 10 and 11 is basically our budget calendar. And, of course, that always starts with the campuses getting their allocations, and I'm currently working on those and getting those. Hopefully, we'll have those out to them by the end of the month. And then we go through that whole budget planning process to where we're meeting with principals, finding out what their needs are, and then coming back into, without going into great detail and keeping it simple, basically coming back in around February or March and looking at compensation plans, and then, of course, adopting our budget there in June. And, of course, and then in August, adopting a tax rate. So is there any questions, any discussion?
Questions or comments?
We'll see. As of now, no.
To be determined.
To be determined, yes.
I will say, I don't think there's going to be an ESSER 4. I will say that this latest surge has tended to hit ADA harder than any surge that we've seen prior to this one. That may lead to some response from the state. I'm not overly optimistic about that because of what they've already done to try and address the the low attendance with that. What are we calling it, Melissa, where they're calculating up based on last year's numbers?
The target percentage attendance rate?
Yeah, that target percentage attendance rate. I think they're gonna stick with that, but we'll see what happens as the districts in the state continue to have this discussion with the Texas Education Agency. Not that it really matters because we're in charge of our world, not everyone else's, but it is worth noting that the issues we're having here are plaguing almost every district in the state right now. Everybody's having to figure out how to manage this hole created by a drop in ADA. So we're gonna see what the state does to come alongside on that.
Other thoughts or questions?
I have one question. Everybody else may know the answer, but what is ESSER? What does it mean?
ESSER is the, help me out, Yarda, elementary, secondary, but it's the federal stimulus money.
Right, I just was curious what
Depending
it
on the-
stood for. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. It's one of the acts to the stimulus package. They name them after acts.
Do you know the amount that, say, 100 kids increase in enrollment changes our budget in the new formulas? Like what do we get for having, or 50 kids? I don't, it doesn't matter the number, just what
Well,
is it?
typically, I think the basic allotment's around 6,000 per kid.
Okay.
So plus or minus, again, based on formulas, but that's just
And
a
that's
rough estimate.
with the way that our property values are going and the new formulas, that's pretty,
Yeah, really what's driving the reduction in our funding is the ADA. That's truly the driver now. The property values, all it's doing is compressing tax rates, so it's affecting the tax rate, not necessarily the funding. So that's the problem, is that as those values are increasing, the rate's decreasing and the students are decreasing, so.
ESSER stands for Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund.
Yarda beat you to it.
Okay.
All right, very good. Any other questions? Coach, you good?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
All right, very good.
All right,
Thank you. Okay, that gets us to item 6A, which is executive session discussion of professional personnel under Texas Government Code 551.074. We'll adjourn into executive session at 6:36 p.m. PM, and we have no more action to come before the board, so we will go ahead and adjourn also at 7:19 PM. Thank y'all for being here, and we'll see you on the next one.